Peace, peace, family. Give me 1 second. Yeah, we're gonna have a good show today. Give me a second. Turn this thing out. Turn this thing around real quick. Give people enough time to come in. All right, I'm ready now. Just a minute. Yeah, family. Today we want to discuss. We're gonna have a conversation about Deloris Tucker. We also gonna have a conversation about the Jews in hip hop, and how we've been portrayed in hip hop for a very long time. So, you know, when I was younger, I would, we would have going back and forth with this C. Deloris Tucker thing, and I used to bash C. Deloris Tucker, and I would always say, I didn't like her. I didn't really know anything about her, about the work that she put in over the years. I had never really studied her. I was in my younger years, 19, 20, 21 years old, and hold on a second. I seen C. Deloris Tucker criticizing gangster rap. I seen her criticizing gangster rap. And, back then, I wasn't trying to hear none of that stuff. We was running wild. What I mean? It was basically later for all of that. But in my older years, it's kind of like, and I'm gonna open the panel up, after I lay out my premise. In my older years, it's kind of like I think C. Deloris Tucker was correct. And I'm very, very, very interested to hear the opinions of the people, out there. Because when she criticized the gangster rap, when she criticized what's up, Sexy Rona, when she criticized these record execs for putting out this kind of music, she came under a lot of scrutiny. And she came under a lot of scrutiny because she was going after these big conglomerates, these big machines. And she talked about us living out these lyrics. It's impossible to sing those lyrics every day and to not, actually not live it out. But I will say this, because I'm a firm believer that the streets influenced the music didn't influence the streets. But there was a period of time when we were growing up where hip hop was a tool used to get you away from the activities that was going on in the streets. It was a vehicle that was used. What's going on, Brother Rob? Hip hop was used, broken class everywhere. People that, like they just don't care. And, they was telling a story. They was taking you on a ride. It had a message to it. It took you on a long ride, down memory lane of what was going on in the community with a message. Desali, I'm gonna send you the link because I definitely want you in on this, Desali. It would take you on this ride, right? They asked Rakim, who we regard as the greatest lyricist of all time, how come he never cursed? Well, Rakim said he never cursed because his mother was listening. Heavy D and them got a rap song called "Don't Curse" back in the day. You had Public Enemy. Chuck D rarely cursed. You had Heavy D. Heavy D didn't cuss. You had Kid and Play. And then you might have had your Coogee raps. So you had certain groups that done that, but it wasn't to the point where everybody was doing it. Because rap, hip hop back then was about fun. Because we had already had the gang violence in New York and Philly and DC. DC was the murder capital back then. I mean, drugs was everywhere. The crack era was in full force. So hip hop was a tool that we used to have fun, the block parties, a DJ, two turntables and a microphone. It was something that we used to bring joy, to bring laughter to ourselves. And at some point, everything that was going on in the streets began to permeate through the lyrics, and the message got lost. It went from love's going to get you to she swallowed it. It went from funky lessons to bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. And it went from a message that was needed like fuck the police to it's just, it was just so many different things. Like even one of my favorite rappers, Too Short. The music that we listened to back then, we wouldn't want our children to listen to it now. We wouldn't want our daughters listening to Little Kim. She telling the girls to take it in the butt and all that kind of stuff. That's not something we would want our 16-year-old daughters listening to. But when we were 17, 18, 19, we was listening to that. We wouldn't want our daughters listening to don't stop, check, pop that pussy, let me, At some point, the music went out of control where there was no, what word am I looking for? There was no cap on it. It was just anything go. Where back in the day, even in the communities we lived in that was drug plagued and violence, certain things adults wouldn't do around the youth. Certain conversations we wasn't privy to. Certain things that was going on, they still tried to keep us sheltered from certain things. But once it went into the music and it just went worldwide, it was all, it was some type of decorum. Because when Public Enemy was saying fight the power, and when X-Clan was out, Drug Corners was doing 40,000 a day in Philadelphia. When they did that Fight the Power video in 88, these corners down here was doing 20, 35,000, 40,000 a day. But there was still a level of respect for Miss Johnson. There was still a level of respect. But once we took the lifestyle that was in the streets and we began to put it through the sound waves every day through the music, and the Coogee Raps and them came out, it went haywire. So then you had C. Deloris Tucker. And C. Deloris Tucker came out, who was an activist all the way from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. And a lot of people only know C. Deloris Tucker. A lot of people only know C. Deloris. Hold on for a second. Hold on. I'm hot. Hold on. Give me. I'm back. Yeah, a lot of us only know C. Deloris Tucker from her battles with Tupac and Death Row, and against the so-called, the gangster rap. A lot of people don't know her activism work. And I'm gonna get into the C. Deloris Tucker part on the second half of this, but the first half, I want to read this article about Jews in hip hop and in entertainment as it pertains to us, and how the Jews are a protected class, and how Trump was to sign over a bill to make Jewish students on universities a protected class, but how the Jews became a protected class under the Civil Rights Act of 64. So anything that you say about a Jew, they make you apologize. But these same Jews own these record labels that promoted gangster rap to our children, and they profited off of it. So our image, our likeness was never protected. They made money off of black people calling each other niggas, but if you said anything about them, they would make you apologize or sue you. So, because of our ignorance, certain things we went for. So, as I begin to educate myself, I know that a lot of the rap music that we call gangster rap was young rappers expressing themselves, telling stories about where they came from. I used to listen to Spice One as a young nigga. I had the guts to pull the trigger and make change out of $5 ass nigga. As time went on, I had much love for seeing niggas guts bust at a nightclub. Too young to get my ass in, but I didn't trip. Security see me. See, I knew all that. And we telling, Spice One telling stories about the lifestyle. Right, Brother Rock. Spice One told the stories. You know, Too Short told you these are the tales, the freaky tales. These are the tales that I tell so well. You don't like my dirty raps. You know, and he told you about all the stuff that was going on in the hood. You know, we had the rappers telling the hood stories. But some of that stuff growing up was supposed to stay in the hood amongst adults. That's why when KRS One gave you Love's Gonna Get You or Illegal Business Controls America, he was telling a story. He was telling you what was going on. He was telling you what could happen. He was telling you what can happen at the end. Scarface, right? A minute to pray and a second to die. They told stories, but Scarface and them had they joints too, like you gotta let your nuts hang. All of that. I'm a born killer. We was rocking with all of that. But see, another thing with that was, as time went on, the younger generation began to listen to that and begin to be influenced and start to try to live out those lyrics. They try to live out the lyrics. So I'm gonna share my screen, and we're gonna jump off. We're gonna jump right off into it because I don't want to be here for. I want to be here all night. So let me share the screen. And let's just get right to it. What's going on, screenwriter? We got Tony Davis in here, Brother Rob, Julanda Zachary, Reverend Chap. Who else we got? Sexy Runa, Black First, Desali, my brother as always, DJM. All right, let's get into it. So this article is saying, next time you want to blame rap music, rappers, and black people for their conditions, don't forget to point out the Jews. Don't forget to point out the Jews behind it all. And I'm gonna break some of this down and explain some of this. This part of the series will show how rap music and movies are being used to maintain the system of racism, white supremacy, and its effect on black people. It's often said that rap music plays a part in the demise of black youth, and I would agree. But while the artists behind the destructive lyrics are to blame, nobody ever points a finger at the owners of these record labels who control the content and its distribution. When you dig into who's really running the show, you'll find a few corporations and a handful of people of so-claimed Jewish descent. So this is not me bashing Jews. This is me pointing out facts that's on the record. Facts that's on the record and how they're profiting off of our demise of our communities, but you cannot say anything about them. I briefly shared in a three-part. This is the hip hop version of somebody that was doing a three-part series. I briefly shared in part 3 how news media is used to manipulate the minds of both black and white people to keep us divided and to engineer thought of behavior. In part 7 of the series, in the last video interview with ex-drug kingpin Freeway Ricky Ross, he mentions how 70s blaxploitation films were a premiere for the drug culture, prostitution, and violence in the black communities, and how the music now, specifically rap, is used as a weapon. So these was the exploitation movies back then. You know, Foxy Brown, Super Sly, Dolomite, Jim Brown, and all the movies that was going on. So before I move to the music, I want to share what black film archivist and historian Charles Wood, aka Professor, had to say about blaxploitation films, reason for their popularity. So I'm gonna play some of this video after I finish reading the article. I want to go down because I want to get it more into the hip hop version of it. I don't want to get into the. All right, let's get here. Let's get here because I'll get into the movie part when I play the. We'll see. As a follower of the true and living God, you should understand the power of music and how it can shape the mind. Minister and prophet G. Craig Lewis, The Truth Behind Hip Hop DVD series exposes the destructive power of worldly music. But can rappers rap about something other than fornication, genocide, theft, money, pride, and drugs? Sure they can, but at the expense of their careers. Rappers are being controlled on some levels, as rapper Scarface exposes. Now, in 2013, Scarface basically spoke out against the Jews and how they control hip hop, and he was forced to backtrack, walk that back, and apologize. Back in 2013. If an artist attempts to produce something that is constructive, which goes against the agenda of the owners of the record labels, they'll just be dropped from the label and replaced. Money talks, and there's always another talented but impoverished, ignorant, foolish black person who will sell their soul for riches and fame at the expenses of everyone else. It's been often said that negative rap is what sells, but I disagree with that. Positive rap is just not promoted enough to sell because there's an agenda to put out harmful garbage. In addition to that, if you feed a generation a steady diet of hamburgers, chocolate shakes, pretty soon that's all they'll want. And that's what I believe happened with rap. This joint gets interesting, Kenny. But rap music wasn't always destructive. It was the youth music. We created it and we owned it. It was something constructive. But constructive. Rappers used to expose racism. Yep. And talk about knowledge of self, stop the violence, unity, and getting a college education. Well, we had those type of rappers early on when rap first started. Like we had the Arrested Development. We had what's the rap group? Cool Like That. I'm Cool Like That from Brooklyn. I can't even remember their names. We had those style of raps, those style of rappers and MCs, but it began to change as time went on. Oh yeah, Digital Planet, Diggable Planet, or something like that. We had Diggable Planets. We had that style of hip hop that big up the black woman, that big up the black man. We had Rakim Shabazz. We had Tragedy, I'm Black and I'm Proud, Arrest the President. We had all that style, all that kind of rap that basically kept the masses up to speed on what was going on in the 80s. And that's in the 80s and early 90s. And at some point there was a shift. Unity, getting a college education and dancing and partying. But at some point it turned into gang banging, thugging, arrogance, boasting, ignorance, getting riches, selling drugs, killing black people, killing the police, devil worship, and disrespecting black women. Rap music was moved into a new direction. It became a weapon. Now, we know growing up, when I was growing up back in the day in Southwest Philly, I seen all kinds of stuff in the streets. But you very rarely seen men, grown-ass men, like when I was like 14, 15, grown men calling women bitches and hoes. I never seen my uncle get mad and call my sister a bitch or a hoe. I didn't see that back in the day. If somebody called your sister a bitch or a hoe, she came and got you, you gonna go whip his ass. That wasn't something that happened. I didn't see a man on the block cuss out a lady and call her a bitch or a whore back in 1985. That wasn't something that I saw. And anybody around my age probably will agree with me. Now, I'm not saying that men didn't call women bitches or beat a woman behind closed doors, but for the most part, growing up in the mid to early 80s, you didn't see men calling women bitches and whores. It just wasn't something that we saw. But so rap music was moved into a new direction. It became a weapon. What happened? When did it start? Around the same time, the drugs and guns were dropped into the black community by the CIA. Here's an interesting anonymous letter that spoke so much to how rap became the garbage that it is today and why. The letter was originally posted at hip hop hiphopisread.com on April 24th, 2012. So they talk about this infamous secret meeting that a lot of people denies. Let's see. Even as the crack era was being ushered in, as a kid, because I was there as a kid, I didn't see black men calling women. I might have seen a woman get smacked every now and then, but very rare if I was out on the block as a kid seeing men refer to women as bitches and hoes. As a kid, I didn't see that. And anybody that's in their 40s and over in the chat room, tell me if I'm wrong. That wasn't something that we saw. It says, so the anonymous letter landed in my inbox about a minute ago. Hello, I am more than 20 years. I've decided to tell the world what I witnessed in 1991, which I believe was one of the biggest turning points in popular music and ultimately American society. I have struggled for a long time weighing the pros and cons of making this story public, as I reluctant to implicate the individuals who were present that day. So I simply decided to leave out names and all the details that may risk my personal well-being and that of those who were like me, dragged into something they weren't ready for. Between the late 80s and early 90s, I was what you would call a decision maker with one of the more established companies in the music industry. I came from Europe in the early 80s and quickly established myself in the business. The industry was different back then. Since technology and media weren't accessible to people like they are today, the industry had more control over the public and had the means to influence them any way it wanted. This may explain why in early 1991 I was invited to attend a closed-door meeting with a small group of music business insiders to discuss rap's music new direction. Little did I know that we would be asked to participate in one of the most unethical and destructive business practice I've ever seen. The meeting was held at a private residence on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I remember about 25 to 30 people being there, most of them familiar faces. Speaking to those I knew, we joked about the theme of the meeting, as many of us did not care for rap music and failed to see the purpose of being invited to a private gathering to discuss its future. Among the attendees was a small group of unfamiliar faces who stayed to themselves and made no attempt to socialize beyond their circle. Based on their behavior and formal appearances, they didn't seem to be in our industry. Our casual chatter was interrupted when we were asked to sign a confidentiality agreement, preventing us from publicly discussing the information presented during the meeting. Needless to say, this intrigue and in some cases disturbed many of us. The agreement was only a page long, but very clear on the matter of consequences, which stated that violating the terms would result in job termination. We asked several people what this meeting was about and the reason for such secrecy, but couldn't find anyone who had answers for us. A few people refused to sign and walked out. No one stopped them. I was tempted to follow, but curiosity got the best of me. A man who was part of the unfamiliar group collected the agreements from us. Quickly after the meeting began, one of the industry's colleagues, who shall remain nameless, like everyone else, thanked us for attending. He then gave us the floor to a man who was only introduced himself by first name and gave no further details about his personal background. I think he was the owner of the residence, but it was never confirmed. He briefly praised all of us for the success we had achieved in our industry and congratulated us for being selected as part of this small group of decision makers. At this point, I began to feel slightly uncomfortable at the strangeness of this gathering. The subject quickly changed as the speaker went on to tell us that the respective companies we represented had invested in a very profitable industry, which had become even more rewarding with our active involvement. He explained that the companies we worked for had invested millions in the building of privately owned prisons, and that our positions of influence in the music industry would actually impact the profitability of these investments. I remember many of us in the group immediately looked at each other in confusion. At the time, I didn't know what what a private prison was. But I wasn't the only one. Sure enough, someone asked what these prisons were and what these prisons were and what any of us had to do with what any of this had to do with us. We were told that these prisons were built by privately owned companies who received funding from the government based on a number of inmates. The more inmates, the more money the government would pay these prisons. It was also made clear to us that since these prisons were privately owned and as they become publicly traded, we'd be able to buy shares. Most of us were taken back by this. Again, a couple of people asked what this had to do with us. At this point, my industry colleague who had first opened the meeting took the floor again and answered our questions. He told us that since our employers had become silent investors in this prison business, it was now in their interest to make sure that these prisons remain filled. Our job was to help make this happen by marketing music which promotes criminal behavior. So their job in this letter said that they were supposed to market music with criminal behavior. So right after that, you start seeing Public Enemy die off. You start seeing Kid and Play die off. You start seeing like groups like De La Soul die off. The Native Tongue family die off. So you start seeing the MC Lights die off. Like that style of rap began to be put on the back burner for what was to come. So let's read on. Let's read on. Our job would be to help make sure this happened by marketing music which promotes criminal behavior. Rap music, rap being the music of choice. He assured us that this would be a great situation for us because rap music was becoming increasingly profitable market for our companies. And as an employee, we also be able to buy stock in these prisons immediately. Silence came over the room. You could have heard a pin drop. I remember looking around to make sure I wasn't dreaming and saw half of the people with dropped jaws. My days was interrupted when someone shouted, "Is this a fucking joke?" At this point, things became chaotic. Two of the men who were part of the unfamiliar group grabbed the man who shouted out and attempted to remove him from the house. A few of us, myself included, tried to intervene. Oh shit. One of them pulled out a gun and we backed off. They separated us from the crowd and all four of us was escorted outside. My industry colleague who had opened the meeting earlier hurried out to meet us and reminded us that we had signed agreement and would suffer the consequences of speaking about this publicly, or even with those who had attended the meeting. I asked him why was he involved with something this corrupt, and he replied that it was bigger than the music business. And he walked back into the house. I remember word for word the last thing he said. It's out of my hands now. Remember, you signed an agreement. He then closed the door behind him. The men rushed us to our cars and actually watched until we drove off. A million things were going through my mind as I drove away, and I eventually decided to pull over and park on a side street in order to collect my thoughts. I replayed everything in my mind repeatedly, and it all seemed very, very surreal. I was angry with myself for not having taken a more active role in questioning what had been presented to us. I like to believe the shock of it all is what suspended my better nature. After what seemed like an eternity, I was able to calm myself enough to make it home. I didn't talk or call anyone that night. The next day, back in the office, I was visibly out of it, but blamed it on being under the weather. So this is, hold on, let me see, because I want to get to one to where he breaks down. I don't want to read everything. All right, yeah, I'm gonna start from here. When he gets, because then he gets to the executives. As the months passed, rap music had definitely changed directions. I was never a fan of it, but even I could tell the difference. Rap acts that talked about politics or harmless fun were quickly fading away as gangster rap started dominating the airwaves. Only a few months had passed since the meeting, but I suspect that the ideas presented that day had been successfully implemented. It was as if the order had been given to all major record executives. The music was climbing the charts, and most companies were more than happy to capitalize on it. Each one was churning out their very own gangster rap acts on an assembly line. Everyone bought into it, consumers included. Violence and drugs became a central theme in rap music. I spoke to a few of my peers in the industry to get their opinions on the new trend, but was told repeatedly that it was all about supply and demand. Sadly, many of them even expressed that the music reinforced their prejudice of minorities. Wow. I officially quit the music business in 1993, but my heart had already left months before. I broke ties with the majority of my peers and removed myself from this thing I had once loved. I took some time off, returned to Europe for a few years, settled out of state, and lived a quiet life away from the music industry. So then let's get down to here. That was a letter. So we get down to the record executives and who actually owns the labels. What's going on, Kenny? Right. The Phil Prison. So basically, the record label owners purposely altered the content to influence drug culture, violence, and everything else negative, which would lead black males to prison to become slaves for corporations, and also signed to deliver the lyrics. None other than these niggas. So it goes here. While Ice-T was the first real gangster rapper, no, he wasn't. The first real gangster rapper came from Philadelphia, actually. His name was Schoolie D. Ice-T studied Schoolie D, but he didn't even know. When you hear Ice-T tell the story, Schoolie D had an album, the record was all black. They didn't know where he was from or what he looked like. But Schoolie D used to use them hard bass, that hardcore bass, Parkside 5-2. He was talking gangster. He was talking about Parkside Killers here in Philadelphia, West Philly gang, and PSK's making that green. That was all gang talk back in the day, and it became a party rap, but it was gang talk. And Ice-T took that for the West Coast and then made it his own. And he tells the story. So while Ice-T was the first real gangster rapper, it was NWA that popularized gangster rap and rose to the top of the charts. They were a hit overnight. Most of us believe these men were in that secret meeting. I wonder who came up with the name of the group. The image above is of NWA. Then and now, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre are some of the most successful and famous rappers today, but it came at a price, the destruction of so many black lives. Now they're glorified in their own biopic in 2050, in their own 2050 biopic, Straight Outta Compton. It bothers me to look at these men knowing what they're responsible for. So let's look who owns these record labels. There are three big music labels, and these three own all the other smaller record labels. Universal, owned by Comcast, which is owned by the Roberts family, CEO Brian L. Roberts. Warner, owned by Access Industries, which is owned by Leonard Blavnik. Sony, owned by Doug Morris. All three of the above men are so-called Jewish descent. Here's a chart of who controls the rest of the media arms in the world. This is an old chart from 2012, and some of the information has changed, Comcast now owns GE, General Electric. When you search out who runs and owns these corporations, you'll find more men of so-called Jewish descent. So what's the point here? Well, Jews claim to be the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. American Christians are encouraged to send money and bless the people of Israel. But being Israelites, the chosen people of the Most High God, there are consequences for such sins against humanity. To destroy multiple countries with fornication, lies, abortion, violence, witchcraft, murder, drug abuse, and homosexuality. Don't you think that the Holy God has a problem with that, especially with people who he supposedly chose as his own? Don't we read the Bible of multiple times where he sent his people into captivity for these sins against him? So this is basically them saying like these are supposed to be the chosen people, and they own a lot of this media stuff that's socially engineering you to behave a certain way, to think a certain way, and all these different things, right? They're saying they're the chosen people. They'll funnel all this stuff out to you, but you better not say nothing about them. You say something about them, they will make you apologize immediately. And we're gonna get into that. We're gonna break that down. No, I agree, AD. They don't serve the Most High at all. You know, when we look at this stuff, the world's media is immoral and they control it. If these are righteous men, they wouldn't allow this kind of content. Yet sin prevails through the media. The Bible says there are immediate consequences for such actions for people of God, right? But nothing seems to be happening to these men or their people, and they continue to prosper. Where are the curses God said will be laid on their people? So this is wait, hold on for a second. When you look at the media constellations, the illusion of choice, media has never been consolidated. 6 media giants now control a staggering 90% of what we read, watch, and listen to, and the majority of that is controlled by Jews. The majority of what you read, watch, and listen to is controlled by Jewish people, and this is the hold on. All right, hold on. Let me get to this part right here. I'm gonna get right into see Deloris Tucker, but I wanted to lay this premise out first, Todd Collins, so that way as I give my stance on why I believe that see Deloris Tucker is correct, this is proving my point as to why she's correct. Now, of course, not all people who claim Jewish descent serve Satan, but from the content of the worldly media, it's clear that these Jewish owners are of the synagogue of Satan. That's just something to think about. Research Khazarian Jews and you'll discover their true origins. So the next time you want to blame rap music and black people for their condition, don't forget to point out the fake Jews behind it all. These powerful men could change the content of most of the world's media tomorrow, but they won't because they work for Satan while maintaining racism and white supremacy. So this is a premise and an aspect of what I wanted to lay out. I'll play a little bit of this for you guys here. Hold on a second. I'll get into a little bit of this real quick, a couple minutes of it, and let you hear the brother that was actually putting some of this stuff together.
50 years of studying black images in film, Hollywood has never had an interest in black folk. As I told you before, it's always been, whenever filmmakers, Hollywood producers, whenever they've dealt with the theme of blacks, it's always been reactionary, never pro-actionary. The antecedents of blaxploitation was Sidney Poitier's Slap, Raymond St. John's, If He Hollers, and Jim Brown. Sidney's films fell out of favor with the new black militancy. And the other thing that you have to contextualize in the zeitgeist of the time was that when they brought on Raymond St. John and Jim Brown, you had the riots.
The fact of the matter, however, is that law and order have broken down in Detroit, Michigan. Pillage, looting, murder, and arson have nothing to do with civil rights.
And Johnson appointed a Kerner Commission to study the cause of the riots.
On July 29th, President Johnson established a Special Advisory Commission on Civil Disorder to delve deeply into the social soul of the nation. It will be led by Illinois Governor Otto Kerner and New York City Mayor John B. Lindsay.
So in that study, the famous lines, it came as a conclusion, we had America going into two directions, one black, one white, two societies. And the other thing that was pointed out is that what caused, one of the causes of the riots was that blacks never saw themselves in the media as other than brutes, criminals, negative, plus in film.
Still to this day.
I'm one of the guys say, hey, where are our black heroes?
Introducing two cops only a mother could love. Meet Coffin Ed Johnson and Grave Digger Jones. New York's finest.
Cotton Comes to Harlem.
Hold on. Did they say that man's name was Grave Digger Jones? Grave Digger Jones. What's going on with Diane Renee?
First release. Ozzie Davis at the helm, MGM. Who are the stars?
Raymond St. John.
And Godfrey Cambridge. Why those two? Remember, there was always an attempt to make Raymond St. John a star. So he had some background. But Godfrey Cambridge, I mean, you know, two tough cops. Because Raymond was off the hook. His fierceness was there. The thing is, MGM's taking a chance with it. So they don't want, once again, if we're going to have black men up there, right away the politics of representation as well, we're going to have to tone these boys down. Godfrey Cambridge, you're not going to compare him to Jim Brown. Jim Brown was radical. He was on. Cotton Comes to Harlem relatively was a big success. Wow, how do we follow this up? My man comes out and he makes Sweetback, badass song. Nobody went to see that film. Personally, I'm going to say piece of crap as far as I'm concerned, okay? Take issue with me. Piece of crap. I didn't put me to sleep.
I don't want to play no more because they playing movies and they might strike me for that. But basically what he's laying out, is the way that we was portrayed all the way back then in the movies, from back then, from the Sidney Poitier days up to the black exploitation days, up to the 80s and 90s, we still haven't had control of our image. And in today's time, with all the social media, when we have the ability to so-called take control of our image, we spend so much time arguing and fighting because now we're dealing with PTSD. We don't even know what a black image should look like. All we do is we deal with everything from a position of trauma, and we beat up on each other now. We don't look to take control of our image on Black YouTube. All we do is bang on each other all day, and whine and complain about this group and that group, and we haven't figured out that all the things that our people went through 40, 50 years ago, all the struggles that they had to go through in these movies, like we actually got opportunity to do some big things, and we're not taking advantage of that. So let's look at this real quick before I go right over into see Deloris Tucker. So you see here, the U.S. courts rules, Jews are a protected race under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There is no doubt, however, that many people have and continue to view being Jewish as a racial identity. So it's telling you right here, right, that the Jews are a protected class. You better not say nothing about them. You will have so many groups up your ass. You will be fired from your job. There will be consequence and penalty. Consequence and penalty for saying anything wrong or disrespectful towards a Jew. But I showed you guys that they own a lot of the record labels, right? They own and control a lot of the record labels that promote and put out music about you. They own the channels that you watch that promotes women in the most ugly fashion. They promote black men in the most disrespectful and downtrodden fashion. But you better not say anything about them. You can say nigga, but you better not say the word kike. You say kike, you will be forced to apologize. You will be punished to the full extent of the law, and you will be looked down upon. So let's look at what Trump did. So Trump, to sign order recognizing Jewish university students, as a protected class. Right. And now the LGBTQ community is now recognized as a protected class. So when you look at the black community, right, I would have to ask, with all these different things that's going on, and they're making Jews protected class, we're still arguing, we're still creating organizations and trying to create what we're calling ourselves foundational black. We're calling ourselves ADOS, all these different names, right? Because we're not protected class. We're witnessing unarmed black men being shot, unarmed black women being shot, but for some reason, we're not being protected. We're not looked at as a protected group or a protected class. But I'm showing you how the Jews are a protected class, and we're not. So let's get into see Deloris Tucker. I was trying to pull up this thing on my I can't for some reason it's not pulling up. Why am I not seeing it? It's after 8 o'clock, right? Give me 1 second, y'all. Man, this sucks, man. What the heck? Oh well, I guess I ain't gonna find it. All right. So let's look at C. Deloris Tucker. Many of you know C. Deloris Tucker from her battles that she's had with Tupac in the 90s and Death Row, and her arguments and fight against the gangster rap. So here we go. So let's read about C. Deloris Tucker. C. Deloris Tucker was the first female African American Secretary of State in the nation. So C. Deloris Tucker was the first female African American Secretary of State in the nation, serving the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania from 1971 to 1977. She was also the convening founder and chair of the National Political Congress of Black Women. Tucker was a renowned civil rights activist and politician who tirelessly served on behalf of historically oppressed minorities and women. Tucker attended Temple University and the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School. She was an active participant in the civil rights movement as part of the Pennsylvania Wharton School. She was an active participant in the civil rights movement. She was an active participant in the civil rights movement as part of the. Watch out, man. They can't see you. Move. as part of the Selma to Montgomery March in 1965, and as a delegate to the historic White House Conference of Civil Rights. In 1970, Tucker served as Pennsylvania's Secretary of State. During her tenure, she encouraged the appointment of more women judges and African Americans to boards and commissions than ever in the state's history. She also led the effort to make Pennsylvania one of the first states to develop voter registration by mail and to reduce the voting age from 21 to 18. She further established statutes that would permit students to register and vote from their college districts. Tucker chaired the Black Caucus of the Democratic National Committee for 11 years and spoke at 5 Democratic conventions. So when you see Deloris Tucker now coming out after so-called rap music, she wasn't just a nobody. See, a lot of us back then didn't know who C. Deloris Tucker was. She wasn't just somebody that just jumped out of nowhere and she had a background. She had a background, and she was very instrumental in the movement, the civil rights movement. She was a key cog. She was the first African American woman Secretary of State. In the nation. She held the Black Caucus Democratic chair for 11 years. She was making moves. She served as the Pennsylvania Secretary of State. So during her tenure in the 70s, she appointed more women judges and African Americans to boards and commissions than ever in the state's history. So she wasn't coming from somewhere where we like, man, fuck C. Deloris Tucker. No, she had some stuff up under her feet. Tucker was one of the original organizers of the Black Caucus and Women's Caucus. She worked to ensure that women, blacks, and minorities had fair representation within the Democratic Party. She was the first African American to serve as president of the National Federation of Democratic Women. She is also the founder of the National Women's Political Caucus. In 1992, Tucker succeeded Shirley Chisholm as the national chair of the National Political Congress of Black Women. As leader, she encouraged Black women to participate in the political process as voters, candidates, policymakers, fundraisers, and role models. Tucker established the Martin Luther King Association for Nonviolent Change in 1983 to develop programs and activities that amplify the teachings and principles of the late civil rights leader. In 1991, she founded the Du Bois Institute to promote the cultural and educational development of African American youth. During this time, Dr. Tucker began a crusade against gangster rap. She rallied against record companies to halt the distribution of popular music that she believed contained derogatory lyrics about women and minorities and had a negative impact on the youth. Tucker served as a member of the NAACP Board of Trustees and on the board of the Points of Light Foundation. She was also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Inc. Throughout her career, Tucker received more than 400 awards and honors, including an NAACP Thurgood Marshall Award, the Martin Luther King Distinguished Service Award, and the Philadelphia Urban League Whitney Young Award. She also received 2 honorary doctors of law degrees from Morris College, Alabama, and Village Maria College, Pennsylvania. Tucker passed away October 12, 2005. She had a heart alignment and lung condition. Survivors include her husband, William L. Tucker. So when you, I play a little bit of her when she's actually speaking. Oh, wow. What the hell? Hold on for a second. Let's play some of her. Let's hear her talk.
At this point, I'm very pessimistic about it. We don't even know what dangers we face.
Can y'all hear it? She kind of low.
What percentage of that high school class did you say?
Let me see.
The intern told me that he was wondering what need to see his mother, and I had to get her back together, and I did. And she just died. He told me.
She kind of this is kind of low. So I want to get to some of her controversies. So we'll go over to this here. We'll go over to this aspect here. And what happened was she came up against some of these record companies, and they went at her. And you know, her having this stellar career wasn't without controversy. She had some things going on where she was fired in 1977. She had some stuff that went on, you know, but she had more good than bad. So let's do this, and then I'll send a link out, and we can build for a minute. Hold on a second. This is kind of long, but I don't want to read everything. But I want to get to the part where she went after these Jewish record owners and Death Row, and what happened, and how she came up. She actually came up against these billionaires. So it says, C. Deloris Tucker captured the outrage of many parents 3 years ago when she declared war on gangster rap music. Prominent politicians leaped to her side. She became a celebrity by denouncing companies that pimp porno rap to children. The 67-year-old African-American feminist never stopped the distribution of any music. But now she is embroiled in an increasingly bitter and personal dispute with Death Row Records, home to such rap stars as Dr. Dre, Tupac, and Snoop Dogg. Instead of leading a moral crusade, now this is the LA Times. You gotta remember. Y'all gotta remember. The reason why I did this in this order, because I wanted to show you how the people that's promoting the images, that's promoting what we read, that's promoting what we watch, are the people that she's going after. So she's not just going after the record labels, because those same record labels are owned by the people that make the papers. Those same record labels are owned by the people that create the news. So she's going to be demonized and looked at as the bad person, because you got to remember, they had an agenda from the start. So now when she's saying, wait a minute, you can't be calling girls bitches and hoes. You can't be calling girls bitches and hoes. You can't be talking about killing black people. Do you understand what we went through in the civil rights movement, where we came from? Do you understand all the years that I've been on boards fighting for black people? And this is the music that our children is putting out? Y'all can't do that. So this is what she's saying. This is what she's saying. But she's getting pushback from the powers that be behind the scenes. So listen to what it says. Instead of leading a moral crusade, she spends her time defending herself against a civil rights lawsuit that suggests she had an economic motive for criticizing rap music. Now, I just showed you her accolades, right? What the hell? I just showed y'all all the things that she's done in her time, right? Instead of leading a moral crusade, she spends her time defending herself against rap music for economic motive. Her celebrity has been challenged by accusations that she misrepresented her educational credentials, profited from the ownership of a slum properties in Philadelphia, and was fired as Pennsylvania Secretary of State for using her post as a personal gain. And she was fired from there in 1977, but she also bounced back on her feet. But this is the way that they got to attack her, to discredit her, because she's speaking out against the gangster rap lyrics. So they had to push back, Brother Rob. The allegations which she denies were dug up by a hard-nosed San Francisco detective firm retained by Death Row. The Westwood-based record company sued Tucker last summer for contractual interference, alleging that she tried to persuade it to break a deal with Interscope, its distributor. The lawsuit was filed one month before Time Warner dropped both Death Row and Interscope as a national rap controversy escalated. Tucker says the lawsuit is nonsense. Death Row, she says, launched its smear campaign for one reason only: to silence her. They want me to back off, but I won't, Tucker said in a phone interview from the headquarters of her Washington-based nonprofit organization, the National Political Congress of Black Women. It's important to pay attention to who is dredging up all those charges. Remember, These are the same people who are out here pimping pornography to our children. Their records and records speak for them. I've been an activist all my life. My record speaks for itself. So she's going after these record labels, but she's also going after the rappers. So Death Row, Suge Knight says he hired the detectives to investigate the allegations raised in the lawsuit, as well as find out about Tucker's background and her motives for attacking his company. So they looked at it as she was doing it for her own financial gain. But see, Deloris Tucker sounded like many of our parents. They didn't like. My dad didn't like gangster rap. Our grandmothers didn't like gangster rap. So it says, see, Deloris Tucker is a phony, Knight says. She is making a career out of disrespecting Death Row and our artists by pretending to be some great moral guardian. It's time people found out who the sister really is. Tucker's record in politics and civil rights have been well documented in Philadelphia newspaper. One of 11 children of a Bahamian preacher, Tucker spent much of the 1960s marching with Martin Luther King and raising funds for social and political causes within the Democratic Party. Founder of the Martin Luther King Assassin for Nonviolence, she has long championed equal rights. And see, this is the thing. When I was young, I didn't know that she was part of any of this. I just thought that she was some old lady that was mad that we was expressing ourselves through gangster music. I didn't know that she had the credentials that she had. So she often invokes King's name when attacking the lyrics and lifestyles of such death row artists such as Snoop Doggy Dogg, who was acquitted of murder last month. So this is an article from years back. And Shakur, who was appealing sexual abuse convictions. The pimps of the industry who distribute gangster rap contributors to the destruction of the African American community, says Tucker, who counts among friends such as vulnerable figures such as Rosa Parks, Maya Angelou, and Coretta Scott King. What do you think Dr. King will have to say about rappers calling black women bitches and whores? About rappers glorifying thugs and drug dealing and rapists? What kind of role models are those for young children living in the ghetto? Ghetto life is familiar to Tucker. Her father was an unsalary pastor at a church he founded in North Philadelphia, one of the city's most poverty-ridden neighborhoods. Her mother paid bills by running grocery stores and renting dozens of tenant buildings that she owned to indignant black families that had moved north in search for factory work. Tucker inherited 24 of those buildings from her mother in 1959. That year, her husband opened a real estate company. Tucker says she remodeled the buildings with government loans and leased them out as single-family dwelling tenants chosen by the city. One year after Tucker's march with King and Selma in 1965, inspectors ruled that 10 of her Philadelphia tenements were in substandard conditions and were a threat to the lives of the occupants. In 1966, Philadelphia article listed the Tuckers amongst the city's worst slumlords. Tucker called allegations ridiculous. Now you got to remember, back then, for her to own that many tenants, you had groups that was coming in that was after her properties. They sought to box her out and get her out because there wasn't a lot of black owners that owned that many properties like that. Like, you know, she was going into the upper echelon of tax bracket, and they wanted to get her out. Philadelphia is a very, 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 very racist city. So we talking in the 60s where she owned 24 buildings. She inherited. They wanted to take that from her. So it's a story that comes with this. We are not slumlords and have never been, she says. We used to own properties in the inner cities that we rented to displaced women on welfare with 6 or 7 children. We couldn't get housing who couldn't get housing anywhere else. We tried to help them, but the tenants never paid their rent. Plus, they tore up the buildings. It got to the point where they had to board them up. So you tell me who's responsible. Newspaper accounts indicate that the majority of the buildings owned by Tucker's family were boarded up during the 70s after being cited for secession attacks and city health codes. Tucker says the structures were either abandoned, taken over by the city, or donated to charities. So let's go down to where she The couple got rid of the North Philadelphia properties before 1971 when Governor Milton Sapp appointed Tucker Commonwealth Secretary of Pennsylvania, a $30,000 a year cabinet post equivalent to Secretary of State. Tucker was the highest ranking black woman official in any state government, according to the newspaper article. So when you read this kind of stuff, she's already, way before rap came out, she was already making moves. Like, she was the highest ranking official, a woman in any state across America at the time. So when she came out talking about gangster rap, she wasn't a nobody. The who's who and the old heads at the time knew who she was. We just didn't know who she was. During her 6 years on the post, she is credited with helping to streamline the voters' registration process. But Tucker's reign ended abruptly in 1977 when Sharp fired her, accusing her of using the office for personal gain. He said she asked state employees to write speeches for which she collected $65,000 in harmonious honorariums, some of the money from charities under her supervision. Tucker's dismissal was criticized. So here we go. Tucker's dismissal was criticized by the Reverend Jesse Jackson and other black activists as unjust and politically motivated. The only reason I got fired was because I refused to support someone the governor had designated as his heir who was going to dismantle the affirmative action program I fought so hard to put in, Tucker says. An investigation conducted by Philadelphia District Attorney Leroy Zimmerman found that Tucker used state employees to research and write speeches. So basically there was a struggle from within, and she ended up getting fired. So I'm just reading out her credentials. Tucker had no luck in resurrecting her political career. She ran for lieutenant governor, U.S. senator, and congresswoman, but never made it past the primary elections. A year after her last political defeat in 1992, Tucker decided to launch her national crusade against rap at the request of prominent members of the National Political Congress of Black Women. Sandra Mills, the campaign manager of Tucker, fell bid for Congress, says the family's involvement in low income property ownership has dogged Tucker throughout her career. Everybody has some baggage in their past, and see Deloris Tucker's case, the baggage and the bad property management, Mills said in a phone interview from Philadelphia. But I don't see how that dismantle in any way the public service she is performing for African Americans by fighting against the negative lyrics content in rap music. So I'm gonna stop there. And this is the story of C. Deloris Tucker and the years of her struggles and her fights, her accomplishments, her downfalls, and then re-emerging in the 90s as far as going against rap music. And I laid out where she's in her fight, these powerful Jews behind the scenes are pushing back because she's going against the machine. And she's going against these rappers. So let's see. Let's look at this. Images of rap. Why does John take so long to come in? These Jones take forever. Hold on. Yeah, I don't know why this John. It's just black. The screen just black. I was trying to pull up some pictures of her. But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna unshare the screen. All right. So I'm gonna unshare the screen and put the link. Put the link in the chat. Somebody want to come up? Somebody disagree with me or agree with me? Come up and let's have a conversation. Tell me what y'all think about gangster rap now, 20-something years later. And what's C. Deloris Tucker wrong? Tell me, I mean, if I'm wrong, and gangster rap was cool, and gangster rap was just part of the culture, tell me I'm wrong. Come up and tell me I'm wrong. If I'm right and you agree with me, come up and tell me you agree with me. But the link is in the chat. I'm gonna see Who want to come up? It's right there. Come up and talk to me. Come up and holler at me. Because this is I think that she was correct. I think that when we listen to the music today in its entirety, and you listen to what it's evolved into, it's something that we wouldn't want our children to listen to. Even back in the day, man, in my hardcore years, Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with. All that, I wouldn't let my son listen to that. I mean, me listening to the lyrics, being out in the streets, being a part of the street culture, and all the things that was going on, and the way it was permeating through the music, you wouldn't let your kids. Shit ain't never going to change. Fuck it. Time to load the clips and we take them to war. Niggas want to flip and we take them to war. Niggas want to flip and we break them. Y'all remember all that? We wouldn't let our sons really listen to that. So I want to hear the people. I want to hear the people that tell me that will come up and tell me that. I want to hear the people that will come up and tell me.
You got all those lyrics wrong.
Move. You weren't even born when those lyrics was out. Yeah, I mean, I got my brother Desali. When we go back and we listen to all the lyrics from back in the day, and it was a part of our culture growing up, and we might say, man, that was my shit back in the day. But I was in the car the other day, and I was listening to NWA, and I was listening to She Smiled, and I had to turn it off. I couldn't listen to it no more. What's up, Ali? Man, come holler at me, man. What you think, man?
Brother George, what's going on, man? What's happening? Hey, man. This show topic hits hard, because me, like yourself, I was actually around and grown then. You know what I'm saying? We were grown people when this was going on back then. We were grown outside thugging. You know what I mean? We out there thugging. And we had our hip hop, and we didn't want you to damn take that from us. You know what I'm saying? And we pushed back hard against Deloris Tucker. I remember thinking that I damn wanted to put hands on her. You know what I mean? Right. I saw her as damn hating on us, on the youth, but thinking back now and being a grown man and a wiser man, I can see, and I said this like 2-3 years ago, she was absolutely correct. She was absolutely right, and what those folk did was they let us hang ourselves, basically.
Yeah.
We won, but we lost.
And you see how before I got to Deloris Tucker, I laid out how the Jews own what we read, what we watch, what we listen to. They own and control it all. So when she went up against Gangster Rap, she wasn't just going up against Death Row. She was going up against the machine. And they was going to push back and try to discredit her anyway. But back then, Ali, I didn't know that she had the background that she had. I didn't know that she came from that background.
Same here.
Yeah, I just thought that she was some old lady that just came out complaining about our music, not realizing that she was on the front line. What's up, Brother Rob? What's your opinion on this, Brother Rob?
Yeah, man, I was listening, and it's ironic. Me and my son was having this discussion the other day, and I told him how wrong we was with disrespecting the elder. You know what I'm saying? But we was so gung-ho. And if you think about it, at the time, Pac was hot, so that revolutionary fuck everybody spirit, you know what I'm saying? That was us. You know what I'm saying? Pac was the man, and he was hot at the time when Deloris Tucker was railing against hip hop and gangster rap. But me being the MC, right, I from back then to now, you know what I'm saying, looking at it, man, she was exactly right. And most of the guys that you would listen to and say that got bars, they can't cuss. Like, you can't keep cussing everybody because you gonna sound whack. You know what I'm saying? So that's the killer. Like, you couldn't be whack the era we from. You couldn't be whack. If you was whack, man, people just get out of here. You know what I'm saying? Where we messed up at is number one, we didn't listen to the elder, and then number two, we started validating people just because they were selling records instead of listening to their bars. And that's where hip hop went wrong at, man. Straight up and down. You know what I'm saying? Me and Psycho was talking about it the other day too. You know what I'm saying? I love the topic. I know I'm all over the place, but
No, you
yeah,
right.
man. Yeah, but I mean, she was right, bro. Right.
And the funny thing is, when I was reading the first part of the article, and the guy said you saw the shift because if here I am 44, I remember back in the day we would go. I remember De La Soul had the song "It's Saturday," and they
Yes,
was that was the shit. I remember coming from school, we listened to that, and right, you start seeing the shit because the NWA first album had came out. And then you start seeing Public Enemy had dropped the album, but you start seeing that style of rap. Like Big Daddy Kane had another big album, I Get the Job Done, and all that kind of stuff, but it started to fade.
Yeah. Long live the Kane. People barely even paid attention to it. I'm like, dude, is you listening to this dude? You know what I'm saying? But long live the Kane. That album got overlooked because of the shift.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
The big shift.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we still had the house parties and Kid and Play was the shit. Remember the joke?
Right.
Come on, baby. And we used to dance to the Kid and Play kick step.
Right.
But you see, they hit us from both directions. They hit us with the audio, but then they hit us with the damn visual. Because at the same time, such movies as Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society came out. So they hit us from down both angles, man. And just like that, it was a wrap.
Man,
it was a
bro,
wrap.
I take it even further back, bro. Look, right. I remember when Colors came out. Yeah. I remember that, bro. I remember the explode, man. Like it was like goddamn Beirut on 79th. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When Colors came out, bro, and then when Boys in the Hood came out, man, wasn't nobody riding the bus. That's how bad it was, Joe. We wasn't even riding the bus. We were like, forget that, Joe. You know, everybody used to go to two malls. They either go to the Plaza or Ford City. Boy, both of the malls was empty all summer. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? For real.
You know what happened? You know what happened too? See, places like Chicago, Philly, New York City, DC, LA, get up here, AM1, get up here, even Oakland with the gangs, right? The gangs was always there. Chicago was wild in the motherfucker in the early 90s and 80s. But
yeah.
DC was wild, Philly was wild. But I don't think nothing was damn near wilder than the Bronx. But
yeah.
But the music was our sanctuary. The music was our safe haven at that time. So you had when Common and all them first came out and all the conscious rappers, we was rapping consciousness because it was a getaway from what was going from the gangbanging. So
right.
Heavy D had Just Don't Curse, but I'm gonna tell you what happened. When Colors first came out, we looked at Colors from an East Coast perspective and said, damn, they over there gangbanging hard. But it was more get money where we came from. I'm talking about blocks doing 40, 50,000 a day. Niggas wasn't really on their gangbanging. They was getting money. But once 3 years later, when they put that New Jack City out, it was over. Game over. Because see, some of the old heads might have looked at Scarface and resonated, but Scarface didn't resonate with me. But when I saw Nino Brown, oh shit. He was in the project.
Exactly.
He was a black dude in the projects getting his paper. And I seen niggas like him before. So, and then I seen Deep Cover. And I said, oh man. What happened was, I'm gonna tell you what happened. We had already seen big shots and big homies already like that. But we revered them and looked up to them, but they always told you, don't be like me.
Right.
In the hood. The gangsters would say they would come give you money to go skating, buy your stuff for the game if you want a team. But they would tell you, don't come out here with us. Don't be with us. But once deep cover and movies like New Jack City came out, we start saying, man, fuck them big homies, nigga, we compete. We on
Right.
now.
Right.
And that's what happened. So then you got 16, 17-year-olds running around with Tech 9s taking over blocks. Because that's what they started that shit by promoting it to us. Boys in the hood too.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree, because that is around the time when you start seeing extended clips and exotic ass guns. All we talking about early 90s. You know what I'm saying? When you can switch it from automatic to semi-automatic.
We call
Like
it
what the fuck? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, a lot of people lost their lives because they had revolvers. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, I mean, literally.
Yeah, that damn 38 special used to do a fist, huh?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I know it's wild in every city or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, like we had I would say it was a code to it, you know what I'm saying?
You
But
know,
whenever, like, you know, new albums dropped, or you know what I'm saying? Like I remember distinctly, bro, when Ghetto Boys dropped, right? So what you would consider our ops, right? Of course they was talking, you know what I'm saying, they language, it was a couple of little references they had made, you know what I'm saying? So man, you know, they around the hood banging it, you know what I'm saying? Banging it.
you
And
know
we
what
got
else?
so mad to where every time we heard a car ran past, you know what I'm saying, letting them have it. I mean, it was bad, you know what I'm saying?
Check it out,
Man, you
though.
know what I'm saying? I'm saying too much, you know what I'm
Check
saying?
it
But
out,
I mean,
though.
that's what it
You know what?
was, John.
Check it out. You know what else happened was that was part of this perfect storm was y'all brothers think back to when we were younger and how it was when it came to getting girls. If you were too thugged out, too damn gangster, the girls wouldn't damn bother with you too much. Think back to the damn 80s. They wouldn't damn bother with you. You know, we was all on our damn Michael Jackson looking down school shit, you know. But then something damn flipped to where the girls would damn, you know, mess with you if you were thugged out, gangster, selling damn dope. You know, used to be if you sold dope or sold whatever, you kept that shit quiet, you know. You couldn't let everyone know that.
Well, I think in all hoods, see, like me being young, because I was a knucklehead and I was wild. I was kind of like I was forced into because I like to play with guns as a young kid. But for the most part, the big homies kept you out of the streets. They didn't let you come into, like, get out of here. So I remember, watch this, and what city you grew up in, Ali?
Jacksonville, Florida.
So you grew up in Jacksonville. So we all grew up in black cities.
Uh-huh.
And predominantly black cities. So Jacksonville, Chicago, Philly. And I can remember back in like 89, right? From about 89 to about 91, we had parties and we doing play kick sets. We doing all the dances that was out. We doing Steve Martin, EPMD come on. We doing all of that, right? I remember going to house parties around 1991. And before that, somebody might have like a 25, Pearl handle 25 in the 80s and going to the party, right? As kids. When we shouldn't have. But once 1991 came in, man, dudes start running around with Mac 11s, Tech 9s, Mac 90s. And here it is, you got guys that can't even do a math problem, but he know how to break down a gun and put the coil out, change the coil, and make it from a semi-automatic to a fully automatic, or like where was this shit coming from? So now, and then you heard the shift in the parties. The music was a shift. So now we in there and we listening to NWA in the party, and your homie got an Uzi, but you like fucking 16, 17.
Uh-huh.
And that became normal though. And now dudes, so if I'm on 57th Street, them niggas on 55th Street is ops now. It turned into ops. Everything went gangster. Everything went gangster after that.
Yeah, and it took a while. Like, we had a peace treaty, right? Here in Chicago, man. We had a peace treaty, and I mean, it was like heaven on earth, right? Man, bro. As soon as that peace treaty broke, I'm talking about, man, and this is early 90s. You can look at Google and look at the murders, right? 100 and almost 200 murders. That 900 happened right around my crib.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Right around my crib. My mama left, she stopped me from going to funerals. You know what I'm saying? But the point I was about to make was this, right? It was that money, George. It was the money that made motherfuckers disrespectful to their mama. You know what I'm saying? Think about it. Your mama worked 2 weeks, she make $1,000. You work 2 days and make $1,000.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's what, and then who is your customers? You see what I mean? Like, man, the people I don't forget that. You know what I'm saying? Man, you know what I mean? Man, them was our customers.
And see, you know what happened? You know what happened? You know what happened, Brother Rob, before I get A1 in? What happened was when we talk about how they flooded, remember they created a market for the drugs to be sold first by creating economic policy. So they used economic policy, and Oakland was one of the drop off points. They brought it through because they had 70s economic fucking inclusion where they created poverty, put the drugs in there. Black men can't get jobs. What you think gonna happen? So then they ushered in the crack. So now, in order for the crack for it to be a business in a prison, they start changing the music. So all that stuff was orchestrated. It was an orchestrated thing that we was too young to understand. So now we had a brother from Jacksonville, we got you from Chicago, I'm from Philly, now we got A1 from Oakland. And as A1 coming, you're gonna see the pattern everywhere. It was in every city. What's up, A1?
Yeah, man. It was in every city. It's absolutely, salute to the brothers up here. Absolutely ingenious and diabolical the way they set it up. They knew they were gonna get the coke out of South America. They knew they were gonna teach people how to, rock it up. The whole chemical process behind that. No random ass niggas in the hood figured out how to do that. That came from laboratories. That came from scientists. How to make rock cocaine. The whole freebase situation coming right out of the 70s, black exploitation. They knew exactly what they were doing. They had it set up on multiple fronts. We moved it into the 80s, right in tandem with the whole welfare state situation. All of these things were set up to make sure that there wouldn't be anything close to something like a Black Panther Party. Make sure there would be something that never came about like another Malcolm X. Like everything they did to glamorize the fuckery, like make it dope during the dope era, the war on drugs. They figured out so many ways to capitalize on it. First, let's make billions to trillions of dollars off the cocaine. Let's make billions of dollars off the guns. Let's make billions of dollars off the prison industrial complex. And let's make money off the music, because then all these things are going to drive each other as their own microeconomies that fit a larger black budget economy that's being built up. Like, it's ingenious from the standpoint of unscrupulous business tactics and how to subdue a population by way of an obviously racist and corrupt government. Like, it's beautiful to see how they set it up. It's just, damn, it had to be us. Like,
but you know what?
We took
Oakland,
major L's.
Yeah, you coming from Oakland, and you hit something that was key. They wanted to make sure that there would never be another rise of a Messiah. So it's funny, I got a brother on here from Chicago and a brother on here from Oakland. Because outside of Philadelphia, New York, Oakland and Chicago was the two most influential aspects of the Black Panther parties. And when you have Fred Hampton unifying the gangs at 21 years old, and during that time, he was a problem. He had to be eliminated. You got Oakland. I mean, the level of racism that they spoke about and the poverty in Oakland was just, I mean, way before you even get to the crack era part. The 70s and the late 60s, Oakland was fucked up through economic policy. So it was right for them to put the crack in because they knew black men couldn't obtain jobs. What do you think gonna happen? And when I show how how influential, see, what I was showing AM1, I show how these multi-billionaire Jewish companies own the labels, the productions of the movies, everything that was being promoted to us. And they promoted so-called nigga shit. But if you said anything about them, and you call a Semitic. They made Professor Griff. They made Public Enemy kick Professor Griff out of the group if you said anything about them or called them out on anything. So our image was never protected. So they had already waged war on the black families in the black community, and that's like what Brother Rob was saying. Because I can go back and AO1, you in your 40s, you know how it was in Oakland back in the day. We was partying at first, and we were partying to about 1990. Like what happened around 1990? AO1, the same thing, right?
In Oakland, I mean, shit, mid to late 80s, that it all went all bad. I watched it happen.
Yeah, it went from partying now, and this is what I was trying to tell people. I think because I want y'all to really understand what we're saying. If you go to Oakland, Chicago, Philly, you always have violence. People was getting killed, but that was amongst adults and people in the dope game. For the most part, kids was kept out of it. Once they start promoting the gangster rap and these gangster movies, not Scarface, but the more like Minister Societies and the Nino Browns, we started to try to we wanted to be like that because I didn't identify with no fucking Scarface. Fuck Scarface. But when I see Nino Brown, when I see Old Dog, I wanted to be Old Dog. You know why I wanted to be Old Dog, AO1? Because I see Old Dogs in my hood every day. And once I seen it on TV, I said, well, shit, because the Old Dogs in the hood told me don't be around them. They told me don't be like them.
They glamorized it.
That's so crazy. Cause like, watching the movie, we all went to the Plaza show to see it, right? Evergreen Plaza to see it. And I mean, it was like a straight up gang war after the movie was over. We was all on the news and shit and everything. You know what I'm saying? Like we vicariously seen ourselves in those characters in that movie. And to be honest, and this is why we don't have these types of discussions, George. Man, we are ashamed of the way we carried ourselves and what we did back then. I mean, that's not anything that I would share with anybody openly as something as good or something that I'm glorifying, But I love the topic, dog. Man, your bravery in bringing it up is notable. You know what I'm saying?
But that's what I say. I say, listen, with C. Deloris Tucker, right? It don't matter if you like or dislike C. Deloris Tucker. But if we go back and those of us that had kids, Brother Rob working in the schools, you're not gonna put a fucking Little Kim album on in the school with the kids. You're not gonna play a fucking Too Short album in the school with the kids. We definitely ain't playing no Spice One album. Even though that was my shit, especially the first one. But you can't play Spice One album. Hey, AO1, would you play Spice One around your nephews and nieces?
No, sir.
No, we can't.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? Just.
But yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say,
just the culture. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it was a whole faction though of hip hop that got overlooked, and I'm talking about super dope albums that was coming out that got overlooked because of that gangster shit. You know what I'm saying? And I would say, you know what I'm saying, what we got to do is try to just develop people appetite for it again. It's super dope artists out here, man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like super dope. And like they don't curse and none of that. You know what I'm saying? Or if they do curse, it's within the context of the song, which is okay in hip hop standards. You know what I'm saying? But man, it's super dope artists out here, bro.
See, you know what I think happened though, and y'all probably can express this better than me because y'all one is from Oakland and one is from Chicago. Being from Philly in the 70s, in the 60s and early 70s, Philly was the gang capital, and then New York, and the gangs died off around the late 70s, and the East Coast became like the drug hub because you remember the drugs were coming through the West Coast and through Florida, and they were shipping right up to the Northeast corridor. because we had the most people here from Boston down to Maryland. I mean, it's just millions of fucking people in the Northeast Corridor. So they would ship the drugs here, and our corners became open air drug markets. So it became less about gang violence, where you look on the West Coast, East Side, East Oakland and West Oakland, they might not even go to each other's hoods because they can't. Well, you couldn't have that on the East Coast because dudes are selling dope. They doing business. So what happened was when the drug stuff came in, it went into cruise. But we used to watch Chicago and the West Coast, and we used to be looking at y'all like y'all was crazy. Like, these niggas is gang banging. Like, they ain't getting no money. What the fuck is they gang banging for? And the funny thing was, and I want to laugh at this. Remember, we didn't have social media. So the only time you saw stuff that was going on the West Coast was in the movie or when they showed it on the news. So our interpretation of them niggas on the West Coast was, man, them niggas is some savages. They just gang banging like a motherfucker. We thought everybody was old dog over there. You know what I mean? But what was y'all?
No, I mean the gang banging. Well, even as far as in Oakland, I can't speak for the whole West Coast, but well, shit. Actually, I did. I had some cousins in Southern California. The gang banging shit. Most of it was relative to gang bangers who were holding down a particular set, a particular neighborhood. It was similar in Oakland, except it wasn't based on Crips and Bloods per se. It was more like, oh, you from 69th and East 14th, so it's 6-9ville versus if you live in the 20s. You know what I mean? It's kind of based on sets, kind of hoods like that, basically who was around you and the people you kind of rocked with, not necessarily a gang. So it was more divided in that sense, but that almost makes it more dangerous because it's easy when you're pulling down the main strip to easily be in somebody else's territory within minutes. So that was kind of the deal with that. But most of it did center around the dope game, meaning you ain't coming up in here because you might be trying to slang and move in on our turf. That's what a lot of the gangbanging shit was really about. It's just that not everybody was a D-boy. Some people were just basically enforcers, just gunmen, whether they realized it or not. So that was kind of the logic behind it.
What was y'all like when y'all see? Because remember when we was growing up, and a lot of younger people that's probably in the chat or watching they won't know. But we was growing up. Remember, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers in the house. We didn't have no social media. So we only knew about the West Coast. That's why Tim Dog said fuck Compton back in the day. Because in his mind, remember, he was from the Bronx. And they kept showing Compton gangster. He's like, nigga, I'm from the Bronx. Y'all know about the Bronx? So he was like, man, fuck Compton. Because remember, we didn't see each other unless they showed it on the video. Remember, we had the jukebox network.
No, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. I totally remember exactly that. We didn't have the same visibility we have now.
Right.
By a mile. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
How did y'all view the East Coast back then from that standpoint? Because y'all couldn't see us.
I mean, mostly what you would see is New York. So, I mean, looking at it from that standpoint, especially we could go, well, shit, late 80s, you could see New York was on some grimy shit. I mean, God, the gang shit just looked crazy. But at the same time, I grew up listening to all of the grimiest hip hop shit to the party shit too. So New York had elements that seemed kind of fun and just seemed dope on that party creativity level, but it looked grimy as shit. Like the Bronx, god damn. Like certain parts of Brooklyn, like holy shit. Like nah, fuck nah. That shit look crazy as I don't know what. So nah.
I think
you're right though.
I think
you're right.
But I'm gonna tell you, you know why the East Coast gravitated towards gangster rap on the West Coast? You know why? And Brother Rob might attest to this, because rap started over here, and the first gangster rapper was in Philly, but most of the rappers were still party rapping. Schoolie D was on some gangster shit, but he was like by himself, him and Just Ice. So what happened was the Bronx was so violent. DC was the murder capital. Baltimore was always violent. Philadelphia always had a high murder rate, right? When we seen the West Coast dudes rapping gangster shit, we was like, damn, they rapping about what we doing. But we use rap as a mechanism to get off the streets and have fun. But have the block parties and start rapping about positive stuff. Once we saw Straight Outta Compton, man, niggas in the Bronx was like, we can do that. And it kind of
unfortunately, the whole West Coast LA scene with the gangster rap into the G-Funk type shit, like NWA having a lot of the funk influences, obviously Ice Cube, Sir Jinx, they're making a lot of beats, you know, Lynch Mob shit with the funk elements, and then obviously Dre takes it into the funk. The Chronic album, a lot of that stuff, just the way it rode and vibed, already just harking back to Black folks coming up out of the R&B, the funk soul kind of vibes. So that just made it easiest for us to really rock with it. But then adding it to the element of the movies, putting that Hollywood spin on it, that just, man, for better or for worse, that just took it in a whole different lane. And then shit, look at what Juice did. Look what Juice did for Tupac. When you start putting movies in the game, like the music and the movies, god damn, it's all bad. Y'all, go ahead.
You know what's funny? Going out to Cali back in the day in the 90s, you were out through some of the worst hoods. It looked like the suburbs compared to the East Coast. I mean, California just, unless when you go to East LA or like the downtown part, California's clean as shit. And then like some of the homies come from over there. They came to North Philly. They seen the Bronx, Southeast DC. Them niggas was like, damn. Because they didn't know, coming from the West Coast with all the gangbanging, they didn't know how we lived on the East Coast. Because remember, we didn't have the technology.
Right.
And, you know, going out there, it was like the suburbs. Like, if you were in South Central back in 97, if you from the East Coast, you don't even know you in the ghetto. Because it was clean.
Right.
Compared to Brooklyn. But
the whole look of it is different. Like even in East Oakland right now, East Oakland, West Oakland, certain parts of it, like until nighttime, you wouldn't really know, you know, afternoon, nighttime when it's just hella niggas out on the block. Or if you went on a Sunday or just day where nobody's outside, it's straight suburbs. But man, at the wrong time is a bunch of niggas out there. It's wild. It could be some beefing, it could be some funking and some gunshots going off, and it just looked totally different than like buildings, you know, people piled on top of each other, like East Coast building, inner city shit like that. Oakland ain't quite like that, and LA, like South Central, is definitely not like that.
Yeah, we were stacked on top of each other like sardines. That's why when you see movies like New Jack City, I tell people like the depiction of it is not real, but then it's like real. Like if you was living here in 1990 and you was in North Philly, and in the 10-block radius, you might have 50, 60,000 people in the 10-block radius. And
it's crazy.
20,000 of them might be crackheads. It was unfucking believable. And when I think back about it now, sometimes it makes you tear up because you look at that and you like, I thought that shit was normal. Like we was just kids playing kickball outside the street. A shootout happened at the corner. Everybody hit the ground for a minute. Dad come out, cuss you out, get back up. You finish playing kickball. Like nothing happened. That was the way of life in the hood at that time. And Brother Rob, you from Chicago. Chicago was worse than Philly.
Right. Well, like we used to look at Philly cats as dudes that was out there getting money, and we just figured the murders was competition. That's what it was. That's what we thought. You know what I'm saying? Like, cause y'all didn't have like organized gangs like us. That's what we figured. You know what I'm saying? But you know, Chicago, we had gangs before gangster rap and stuff. You know what I'm saying? And we talking Chief Marley. We talking about Larry Hoover. We talk about legends when it comes to street gangs. You know what I'm saying? And you know, some of it was political, but with the introduction of crack, bro, that made it to where everybody couldn't sell D. You know what I'm saying? So when crack came, that made it available for everybody. And you know, I mean, I ain't involved in nothing like that no more. You know what I'm saying? But man, I know some of the brothers, they was doing business with dudes from Philly, because from what I hear, this is what I hear, y'all was getting it at good prices. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I mean that's what I heard. You know,
what made Philadelphia so violent was during the '80s, with the Jamaican Child Posse and the Junior Black Mafia, and we had a lot of remember we got the second largest Latino population in the country. So what happened was Philadelphia was a hub at that time for a lot of the cartels, and it was just drugs every fucking way. Philly had the biggest open air drug market in the country, even more than New York's, because Philly was a gold mine. It wasn't as intense as New York, because New York was a place where 10 million people lived, all in project buildings fighting for territory. Philadelphia was a place where, like Oakland, out-of-towners could not come at all. out of towners could come and get killed because Philly was already fighting block to block over territory. So it was bad. It was bad. And what I'm saying was I saw as a kid, I saw it change from the mid 80s to the late 80s to the early 90s where it just got super violent. Because you remember, they came in, and you would know this, Brother Rob, in Chicago and probably in Oakland too. From around 1988 to about 1992, they locked up everybody. And then around 92, a whole bunch of young kids began to take over those corners that didn't have the discipline of the dudes of the 80s. And shit went haywire. From the end of 91 to about 96. Remember, Chicago in 1994 had the highest homicide rate in any other time except for 1974. Because when they put them indictments in from 1988 to 92, across the country, they had a countrywide indictment. They locked up every fucking body. And everybody went to jail. And you seen the spike in homicides from 1991 to 96. Go ahead, y'all.
Nah, and
George, let me ask you this.
Right. That man broke. Remember that peace treaty I was talking about?
Yeah.
That peace treaty broke. Next thing you know, them indictments came down. They locked up all of the govs that was in the GDs. They locked up a bunch of the vice lords, and then they locked up the remaining leadership of the Stones. And then it became the Wild Wild West.
It went haywire. But go ahead, A1. What you about to say, bro?
Oh, I want to ask this because Water Sniper in the chat asked a very interesting question. Let me scroll to it real quick. George making two. Oh, wait. Basically, Water Sniper was asking about the panel's thoughts on Tupac and Juice. Did his character Bishop? Damn, where's that coming at?
I said, do you think the movie Juice helped give Tupac even more terrible image by playing the character? I answer it this way. No. And not at that. No. You know why? Because him playing the character Bishop was a typical New Yorker at that time. Hyper masculine male in Harlem, in the Bronx. That's just what it was. That's what it was. So Juice was a depiction of what was going on at the time. So I don't think so. I think that what I think happened, like here in Philly, the reason why you had the big homies couldn't get control, like when we was averaging 500, 600 murders a year, the reason why you couldn't get the big homies to stop the killings, because if my big homie, God rest the dead, may he rest in peace, but my big homie at the time, if he would have lived and when he came home, because he got locked up in the Bahamas, when he would have came home and tried to stop the violence in Southwest, he would have got a RICO case immediately. The feds would have came in and locked him up immediately. Because in places like Philadelphia and Chicago, for a man to get in the streets and stop the violence, he has too much power. He has too much power. And the state and the feds automatically say he's the one. Like if I can go to the south side of Chicago and stop and break up a Stones and GD fight, first thing the feds gonna ask is, who the fuck am I? Who the fuck is this guy? Who gives him the power to go and stop that? That's why the big homies, when a lot of y'all in the chat room be saying, why these OGs don't stop the violence? They can't stop the violence. They can't stop the. What's the homie that just come home from Oakland? Lil D. Lil D can't go out in Oakland and stop that shit. They're gonna put him back in jail.
Right.
They're gonna say this nigga selling coke again. That's how they got it set up, A1. That's how they got the game checkmate. I got homies that's coming from the feds that's well respected, well connected. They can't go out the street and stop these niggas.
I know on the West Coast when people saw Juice, people went crazy over Tupac, because that's the thing. Like a lot of cats I knew would just gravitate into whatever kind of thug type shit they could really even rock with. So seeing Tupac and Juice, and then him kind of going from like the Digital Underground type of vibe, the party fun, into this sort of like super thug type feel, and then more on the thug type messages, especially then when he goes into the LA scene and goes, G-funk LA thug. cats was just eating that up, lapping that up. Because then it's just like you said, George, the idea of them showing O-Dog in Menace to Society, then it kind of validates the O-Dog in your hood. So the average dude who's either really on some thug shit, on some wannabe thug shit, they saw Tupac as like justification and validation for that to really rock and be glamorized, like, and have pride in that. Like, that's why I say, like, people talk about Pookie and Ray Ray. I'm like, well, just say what it really is. A proud thug, somebody who takes pride in the idea of being on some thug shit. Like, I met a lot of dudes and known a lot of dudes around that time who were really like proud to be, and felt empowered and uplifted by seeing that on the big screen like that. And that legit right now, let me say this last thing because I gotta go. I have homies right now that's sitting on life sentences, and cats I know that's out there rolling around with 2 strikes who will straight up tell you they was listening to a whole bunch of like thuggery type music and wanted to gravitate to that and fucked around and ruin their lives for that
it
shit.
Was part of, you know what it was? It was part of the culture, AM1, because like I was just a kid, but then I remember watching Breaking and Wild Style on B Street and all that, right? And I knew the big homies. I seen shootouts. I came from school. I seen the crack. Listen, I seen corners doing 40, 50,000 a day. But to me, that was just a normal way of life in the hoods that we lived in. And I seen old dogs. I knew them. But when I seen the movies, I said, damn, they like that over there too? And I asked questions like, what they doing in California? Because I know out here, but see, we didn't really pay no mind because it was just, to us, it was just a normal way of life. Niggas got shot every day, B. You seen Paid in Full? Niggas get shot every day, B. It sounds fucked up and demented, but hey, well, that's just how it was. And the sad part about it is I would never want to raise my son around that type of environment. But you know what's crazy though, Brother Rob? As crazy as it is, we still had a lot of fun in the hood. We still had a lot of fun in the hood.
Man, it made us the men that we are. When you really think about it, like it's hard to describe to somebody that it was a code if they didn't live under those circumstances, because they all they can see is the fuckery, all they can see is the murders. That's all they can see. They don't understand that it's circumstances that lead to those murders, and it's histories behind this stuff. It's circumstances behind it, and then trying to explain it. Sometimes we get lost in the sauce. People don't want to hear it because they're not empathetic. They're not empathetic. I mean, to truth be told, they just looking at it through white people's eyes.
Right. You know what's funny? I say this before I go. I'm gonna go pick up the wife, but I'm gonna get y'all opinion on this real quick. What's funny is this: 2 things. When Ice Cube left NWA and came to the East Coast, Ice Cube is down with the PE. Now every single bitch want to see me. Big Daddy is black, word the mother. Let's check out the flick that exploits the color. Remember that? Burn Hollywood? He went political. He talked a lot of the political stuff when he came East Coast with Sir Jinx and them. And that album was banging. Was super banging. And you know what's crazy? AM1? Ice Cube was accepted and loved on the East Coast. We was fucking with Ice Cube heavy. Epic Ice Cube, because I'm going to tell you, I had got locked up. When I came home, I got locked up as a juvenile and was locked up in a placement where you had people from all over the country, up Glen Mills, right? And I learned who Spice One was. I learned who Sally Cell was. I learned who Gangster Nip, EA Ski, Hawk and Bird, all in the West. I was listening to all that shit because they was talking gangster shit. And that's the life we was living. So when I heard MC8, I'm like, damn, the lyrics kind of corny, but that nigga on that sinister shit, that shit dope. Play that again. And we listening to that. So I took it home. And I remember I was on the block and I put a Spice One album on as a young nigga. And my homie was like, who the fuck is that you listening to? I said, Spice One. They bust out laughing at the name AM1. They was like, no. They was like, Spice One, what that nigga hungry? What the fuck is wrong with that? Because I'm listening to
No, you know what though? I know exactly what you're talking about because I used to love NWA like back in the late 80s. Like I had all their tapes, all their maxi singles. Like a lot of cats don't even know about them singles, the maxi singles. I had all they shit, all the extra ass B-side versions. And then when Ice Cube, when they split away, he came with Kill at Will. He came with a supreme hip hop classic Death Certificate. Ice Cube knew what was up. He was writing a lot of the NWA shit, but he saw what happened with Jerry Heller. He saw
Yeah,
that whole situation. That's why he peeled away. But he got a lot of love because hip hop cats all around the country, all around the world, everybody knew about NWA, but a lot of people knew on the low that Ice Cube was really that dude behind the scenes who had like a true mind on him and understood the business level. They respected him for peeling away like that.
yeah. It was you know, it was something when we actually look back at the culture. And you know, these are the things. And I forgot the second part. It was something important I wanted to say before I get out of here. I wanted to say something because it translated across. It translated from the east to the west. We might have had a different style, but it was the same culture. It was. We went into a degenerate culture. Well, you know what? No, the degenerate culture was already there, but it wasn't kept. It wasn't out to the airwaves. It was kind of like adults did grown up shit, and it wasn't for kids. Stay out of grown up shit. Once it went into the music and in the culture, it just went everywhere where everybody was doing whatever they wanted to do. And when you go back to the 70s, disco music, they kept that from us. We know that they were snorting cocaine and fucking and doing all that kind of shit, but that wasn't for kids. It wasn't for kids. And at some point, it just went everywhere. So, I mean, you know, it was a lot. I'm going to do a part 2 on this, though, because I like to do this where I'm not pointing the fingers. I'm just talking a culture we grew up in. Would you want your kids to be exposed to that culture? And if you don't want your kids to be exposed to that culture, then see, because I'm finding new methods to approach this. Now, I listen to the manosphere arguments, I listen to the women arguments, and I don't like neither one of the fights. So what I like to do is I ask a simple question: the culture that we grew up in and the communities that we came from, would you want your children exposed to that same culture? If the answer is no, then we know we got work to do. It's not that hard to figure out. We know we got work to do. That don't mean that we was born with one less chromosome or black people are stupid. That means that we was just duped into some shit, and then other people stood to benefit from our demise and dysfunction. We know what they did in Oakland. We know what they did in California and how it permeated through Florida up to New York and all across Chicago and everywhere else and what it did to us. But we normalized the culture that was dysfunctional. So I'll let AM1 say something to close out, Brother Robert, then we close out.
Yeah, man. As far as the whole thing with hip hop, like from the music standpoint, you know, hip hop is really all the elements. They really, you know, try to push the dance element, the art element, the DJ, and they kind of push that to the wayside because it's easy to monetize. They broke down a lot of the groups and got into solo acts, and then they kind of tried to reform the groups like with somebody like the Migos, which is really just a manufactured group of some lame dudes that don't really have any talent, but just trying to, you know, leverage that whole trap vibe, easily replicated type of sound that you see took over, and it took over because of the very same label people that you keep referencing, George, in introducing concepts like we doing this for the culture, which is really just another social conditioning move where some people who don't look like us are dictating to us what our culture is. But as far as how hip hop came up on the music tip, we didn't even really know what we had. Remember back in the 80s, late 80s, they were still calling it a fad. They were saying it was going to fade away. But once they understood that it wasn't going to fade away, then they had to seize control of it, monetize it, weaponize it against us. So it organically kind of did what it was going to do. It had its positive elements, it had its uplifting elements, it had its negative elements, which was a reflection of black and brown folks at that time coming up out of New York and then it going national and then worldwide. But once they understood the worldwide power it had, they had no choice. I mean, they had to weaponize it because it was dangerous for them. But now that we know better, 40 years out, the real question is, what do we do? I'm 41. I can look at hip hop and say, look, if I got to pick hip hop or my people, hip hop will burn down overnight if it's up to me, because fuck all that. I care more about my people than I care about some kind of genre of music or the culture kind of around that. If the culture is going to be weaponized against us and fuck us up, then it got to go. Or we got to figure out something different. Go ahead, y'all.
Come on, Brother Rob.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me, man. I just say, man, we gotta look back in history with context. And so having conversations like this, us disrespecting the elder, and now we looking back and saying that was a mistake. We can look and see where we went wrong and try to correct that, you know, as we move forward. I think that's important that we look at history in context. we can literally, hopefully literally use the music and weaponize it for our benefit. And I would call it positive propaganda, if you will. You know what I'm saying? So, that's my final thoughts.
Yeah, and I'll say this as we go. I see in the chat room some people saying Old Dog and Bishop. Who was Bishop? Oh, you talking about Bishop? No, Old Dog was worse than Bishop. But the East Coast version of Old Dog would have been Lawrence Fishburne's character in King of New York. King of New York. Y'all remember Lawrence Fishburne's character? The one when he carried the double Berettas that was putting in work. So and those depictions was real. But Old Dog's character was dangerous because Old Dog character represented the people like a George Macon or a young buck in Chicago or Milwaukee or St. Louis that was wild. Young, wild, don't give a fuck. Young, 15 years old with a Tech 9 and daddy issues or mommy issues and wish a nigga would mentality. That was all across America. That was a problem. Undisciplined. No old heads, no big homies to guide the steps. So that depiction of Old Dog was across America. He was in Jacksonville. He was in Miami. He was in Houston. He was everywhere. In Philly, we had a Mac 11 with a Muslim guard wrapped around it. You know what I mean? Or a strap wrapped around with a 33 shot clip. In our ignorance, listen to the term. I wish a nigga would. We was conditioned. I wish another black man would, so I can gun him down. That's how they conditioned us. We normalized that shit. We normalized it. And we gotta get back into the consciousness and begin to think about that. And we gotta change it. We gotta change that. We gotta really work on that. Because this is our communities, man. And that's why I asked the question. I'm gonna do a part 2 on this and get another full panel discussion. Because I like to have it, no arguments, grown men. We can have grown up, we all in our 40s. There's no reason why we can't come on these platforms and behave. I'm not doing the argument no more. I don't know these people personally. I'm not arguing with people I don't know. And I want to be able to talk to grown-ups and have grown-up conversations, man. And we try to get to some, when y'all leave here, we try to leave here with something that we learned that we can take back to our respective communities. But I end it and I'll say this. If you think the culture that we grew up in, you wouldn't want to expose to your own children, then you know something was wrong. And we got to reevaluate and look at the things that we actually expose our children to. You want to say something, A1?
No, I'm good. I was just listen to it close out.
Man, thank y'all for coming on. I think I'm gonna do a part 2, man. I send y'all the link. I'm gonna try to get a bunch of brothers on, man. And we really talk about and see. Sometimes it's fun to talk about the different things that went on in different cities, from all the way from Philly to Oakland and how we saw certain things. Those are dope conversations because when we was growing up, A1, we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. I got my man D Red from Houston. Like we couldn't have these conversations back in the day. So I'll see y'all probably tomorrow. I'll do a part 2. All right. So thank y'all for coming. Peace.
Peace, Rob. Peace, George.